A racist neighbor called the police, then pushed a black child into the pool. What happened next shocked everyone. Subscribe, like, and tell us where you're watching from. It was a warm evening in late August, the kind that settled over suburban Atlanta like a blanket of calm. The sun had just slipped behind the line of oak trees, leaving a faint orange glow on the rooftops. Officer Matt Reynolds drove slowly down the narrow street, the rhythmic hum of the cruiser's engine breaking the stillness. His partner, Officer Carl Hill, sat beside him, scanning the neighborhood through the windshield. The dispatcher's voice still echoed in Matt's mind. Noise, complaint, 218 Maple Drive. Caller reports loud music and disruptive behavior. Complainant identifies herself as a neighbor. Another noise complaint. Routine, harmless. But as they pulled up in front of a neat, white-fenced house with trimmed hedges and a flower bed so perfect it looked artificial, Carl frowned. A woman was waiting for them by the gate. Mid-40s, short blonde hair, pearl earrings, posture straight like a schoolteacher. She waved politely, her smile rehearsed. "Officers, thank you for coming," she began, her voice smooth but cold. "It's been unbearable. They've been here only a few weeks, and already the neighborhood feels different." Matt glanced at her. "You said it's your neighbors making the noise?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, the new ones. Loud music, constant parties, strange people coming and going. I tried being polite. I asked them to keep it down, but..." She gave a sharp laugh. "They just stared at me, like I was the problem." Carl raised an eyebrow. "Have they threatened you?" "Not directly," she said, "but you can tell the type. They just don't fit here. This used to be such a peaceful, respectable street." Matt felt something tighten in the air. The way she said respectable wasn't about noise. It was about something else. Something old and ugly that had nothing to do with decibels. Still, procedure was procedure. "All right, ma'am. We'll go talk to them." The woman stepped aside and gestured towards the tall white gate. "Be careful," she added. "He gets aggressive. You'll see." Matt pushed open the gate. The backyard stretched beyond the house, well kept with a wooden deck and a faint smell of grilled meat in the air. They walked to the front door, Carl just behind him. Matt knocked. A moment later, the door opened, revealing a tall black man in his early 40s, wearing a white t-shirt and gray sweatshorts. His expression was calm but wary, as if he'd been expecting trouble. "Evening, officers," he said, voice steady. "What's going on?" Before Matt could answer, the woman behind them spoke up. "There he is. That's him. He's the one making all that noise." The man's eyes flicked toward her, tired and irritated. "You again? What now?" She gasped and stumbled backward theatrically. "You saw that. He just lunged at me." Matt immediately raised his hand. "Sir, calm down. Step back, please." The man sighed, lifting his hands slightly. "I'm calm, officer. I didn't touch her. She's been calling you guys almost every other day since we moved in. Last time, she said I was looking suspiciously at her mailbox. Before that, she said my wife's car was parked too close to her property." The woman cut him off. "You people just don't respect order. You play that music all day. The smell of your food spreads everywhere." Carl's tone hardened. "Ma'am, please let him finish." But she wouldn't stop. "I'm just saying what everyone here thinks. We worked hard to make this a nice community, and now it's ruined because we exist," the man said quietly. His voice wasn't angry, just hollow. "Because we have cookouts? Because my friends are black?" Matt felt the tension coiling between them like a wire ready to snap. He needed to diffuse it fast. "Sir, can we take a quick look around? just to confirm there's no disturbance." The man nodded. "Sure, but she's not coming inside. I'm done letting her step on my property." They agreed, leaving the woman by the gate. Matt followed the man through the house and out the sliding glass doors to the backyard. The smell of barbecue was stronger now. Near the pool, a few people were laughing. A small speaker played mellow jazz, and a toddler giggled from a stroller under an umbrella. Everything looked peaceful, normal, harmless. "See?" the man said quietly. "We're just celebrating my wife's birthday. That's my brother on the grill, and that's my niece. No one's causing trouble." Carl nodded. "I believe you. Let's just ask to keep the volume a little lower for the evening, all right? The walls carry sound in neighborhoods like this." "Understood," the man replied. He turned off the speaker with a remote. But even as the situation seemed resolved, something in Matt's gut told him it wasn't over. The woman had looked too composed, too certain of herself. Then it happened. A piercing scream shattered the calm. "Help! Help!" Matt and Carl spun around, racing back toward the house. They burst through the sliding door and froze. At the edge of the pool stood the blonde woman. Her face twisted with something that wasn't fear. It was hate. In front of her was the stroller, the same one that had been under the umbrella. Before anyone could react, she pushed it. The stroller plunged into the water. The man roared, a sound that didn't even sound human, and dove headfirst into the pool. Carl jumped in right after him. Matt rushed forward, shouting into his radio for backup and an ambulance. The woman screamed something incoherent about proving her point as she stumbled backward, but he caught her wrist before she could flee. Seconds stretched like hours. Then Carl surfaced, gasping, holding the little girl in his arms. She was coughing, crying, alive. Matt shoved the woman to the ground and cuffed her wrists. "You're under arrest for attempted murder," he said through clenched teeth. The woman's voice cracked. "No, you don't understand. He's dangerous. People like him." Carl cut her off, dripping wet and furious. "People like you are the reason we still get these calls." The sirens grew louder in the distance. The man clutched his daughter, whispering, "You're safe, baby. You're safe," over and over. His wife collapsed beside him, sobbing. Matt looked at the woman, lying face down on the pavement, her perfect hair ruined, her voice still muttering about keeping the neighborhood safe. And he realized something he'd never forget. Sometimes evil didn't look like violence. Sometimes it looked like politeness, like a smile that hid a centuries-old poison. The pool water rippled quietly under the fading sunlight, reflecting the red and blue flashes of the approaching patrol cars. That was the night everything changed on Maple Drive. The backyard was still shaken from what had just happened. The music was off. The grill was still smoking, but nobody was laughing anymore. Everyone stood frozen around the pool, staring at the blonde woman face down on the concrete in handcuffs, and at the little girl who had just been pulled out of the water. She was coughing, crying, clinging to her father like she was afraid the world might open up and swallow her. "It's okay. Daddy's here. Daddy's here," he kept repeating, voice rough and breaking. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold her steady. Water ran from her braids down his forearms and dripped onto his shirt. His wife knelt next to him, sobbing, but trying to keep her voice soft. "Breathe, baby. Just breathe." Officer Carl was still soaked from the pool. His vest was heavy with water, his uniform clung to him, his chest rising and falling fast. He kept looking between the child and the woman on the ground like his mind couldn't accept what he'd just seen. Officer Matt had one knee in the neighbor's back, one hand on the cuffs, and the other hand on his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4, B13, he said, voice clipped. "We have a child pulled from a pool, conscious and breathing but shaken. Request an EMS to 218 Maple Drive. Also, be advised we have one female detained for assault on a child. Repeat, we have one in custody for assault on a child." "Assault?" The woman spat, twisting her head just enough to glare up at him. Her voice wasn't scared. It was offended. "I was protecting this neighborhood. You don't understand what's been happening here. He's dangerous, he's aggressive, he gets violent. I was trying to show you what kind of father he is." Carl turned his head slowly and looked at her. "Shut your mouth," he said. He wasn't yelling. He didn't have to. She tried again, louder this time, like she thought volume would become truth. "He threatened me. He's been threatening me since the first day they moved in. I told you already, I don't feel safe living next to people like—" "Like what?" the father said. His voice wasn't calm anymore. He stood up, still holding his daughter against his chest, turning to face her. His eyes were red, his jaw tight, his arms flexed around the girl like he was physically shielding her from the entire block. "Finish that sentence," he said quietly. Matt stepped in fast. He wasn't going to let this turn into another accusation he'd have to explain later. "Sir, I need you to stay back," he said. "I promise you, she's not going anywhere." The man let out a bitter laugh. "That's what you said last time." That sentence made Carl look at him. "Last time?" Carl asked. The man exhaled. He was breathing like someone who had run too far and had nowhere left to run. "You want to know how long this has been going on?" He nodded toward the woman. "Ask her how many times she's called you." Matt glanced down at the suspect. "How many times have you called about this address?" She said nothing now. He didn't wait for her. "She's called the cops on us 4 times in 9 days, the man said. 4 since we moved in." His wife wiped her face with the back of her hand. Her voice shook. "The first night we were here, we were still unloading boxes. Boxes. It was just me and him and our daughter asleep on the living room floor because her bed wasn't even built yet. She comes over, knocks on our door at 10:30 at night and says, 'Excuse me, are you sure you people are in the right neighborhood?'" Carl closed his eyes for a second. "She said that?" he asked. "Oh, that was just the start," the wife said, laughing in that way people laugh when they're actually breaking. "Day 2, she stood in the street with her phone out filming us, saying she was documenting activity for the HOA. Activity? We were carrying in groceries." The man nodded. "Day 3, she called you," he said, looking at Matt now. "Said I was acting suspicious around her car. You guys came out here and made me step away from my own driveway, in front of my kid." Matt held his stare, absorbing every word. He remembered. He hadn't been on that call, but he'd heard about it. Male in a gray hoodie casing vehicles. That had been the phrasing. On Maple Drive, in the middle of the afternoon. "She smiled while you were patting me down," the man continued quietly. "You know that? She was standing there with her arms crossed, smiling, like she'd done something good for the community." The woman on the ground hissed, "You were standing too close to my car. I don't know you. I don't know the people you bring here. I don't know what you're capable of. I have a right to feel safe." "No," Carl said. "You have a right to tell the truth. That's what you don't do." The wife let out a small, angry breath. "Day 5, she said. She slides a note under our door. Some of us have worked very hard to make this neighborhood what it is. We don't want it turning into something else." "What else did it say?" Matt asked. The wife looked at him like she wasn't sure if he really wanted to hear it. "It said," the husband answered for her, "if you people like loud music and smoke and hanging outside all night, maybe this isn't the street for you." Carl's jaw flexed. "She calls my brother those types," the man added. He jerked his chin towards the grill. "That's my brother. Works night shifts at a hospital. Comes here one time to relax and celebrate my wife's birthday, and this woman stands at the fence and tells him, and I quote, 'We don't need that energy on Maple Drive.'" Matt didn't respond. He didn't have anything useful to say to that. The blonde woman twisted under his knee again. "This is ridiculous. This is insane. You're all acting like I'm the criminal, when I'm the one who's been harassed for over a week. They blast music for hours, they park all over, they leave trash, they make the whole street feel unsafe, and then—" "My daughter," the man said, voice suddenly shaken with fury, "is 3 years old." Silence dropped over the yard. The only sound for a moment was the girl's breathing, uneven and scared, her forehead pressed into his shoulder. "She can't swim yet," he said. "You knew that." The woman scoffed. "I was trying to prove a point, okay? I was trying to show the officers what kind of environment she's in. You had your baby next to a pool. You think that's safe parenting? You think that's responsible? I was doing what Carl snapped. "You pushed that stroller into 10 feet of water," he said, each word low, hot, precise. "Stop pretending you tripped. We all saw it. I was in the damn pool right after him. Don't tell me what I saw." Her face flickered then for the first time. Not guilt, annoyance, as if what irritated her most was that nobody in this yard was buying her story. Matt tightened the cuffs a little. "Do not talk again unless I ask you a direct question." The gate and the side fence burst open and 2 more units came in fast. Blue and red washed over the white siding of the house and over the water in the pool, painting the surface in flashes. A paramedic jogged across the grass with a bag. "Over here," Carl waved. "Is she breathing?" the medic asked. "Yes," said the father. "She's breathing. She cried. She swallowed water, but she's breathing." "I need to take her for evaluation," the medic said, kneeling. "We're going to listen to her lungs, make sure she doesn't aspirate. Sir, I'll need to—" The father did not let go. "I'll go with her," he said, not a request, a fact. "You're going," Matt said. "Nobody's stopping you." The medic nodded and started checking the child right there on the patio. The little girl whimpered and reached for her father's beard with her tiny wet hand. His whole face cracked at that. "I got you," he whispered again. "I got you. I got you. You're okay." Carl stepped away just enough to breathe. His shirt was still dripping. His heart was still hammering. He had pulled people out of cars, out of fights, out of overdose scenes. He had never in his career watched an adult calmly walk up to a stroller and send a child into deep water like she was dropping garbage. He looked at Matt. Matt met his eyes. They didn't have to say it out loud. This wasn't a noise call. This wasn't a neighbor dispute. This was an escalation. This was targeted. This had intent. Carl turned back to the suspect. "You're done here," he told her. "You're going to sit in that cruiser, you're going to stay quiet, and you're going to answer for this." Her tone snapped back to that clipped, offended politeness from the beginning. "So now I'm the villain? I'm the one going in cuffs because I tried to keep the street safe? You let these people turn this place into a circus, and when I finally do something, suddenly I'm—" These people," the wife repeated softly. She stood now, not crying anymore. Her eyes were locked on the woman in cuffs. Her voice was very calm. "Say it. Say what you call us when you think nobody hears you. You said it to my face on Tuesday." The woman hesitated. That half-second was enough. Everyone understood. Matt understood. Carl understood. The backup officers understood. The medic understood. Even the night air seemed to understand. The wife took one step closer, just one. "You looked at me," she said, "on my own driveway in front of my own child, and you said, 'Some of us worked hard to buy here. We don't want this place turning into where you people come from.'" My daughter was standing right there. The suspect rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, are we really doing this race thing again?" Carl spoke first. "Yes," he said, "we're doing this race thing again." He pointed at the wet concrete, at the pool, at the crying child. "Because that's what this is." The husband's shoulders dropped then, as if something heavy inside him finally let go, not because he trusted the system, but because, for the first time since they moved into that house, someone other than him had said it out loud. "Officer," he said quietly to Matt, "I need you to hear me. We're not bad neighbors. We're not what she's painting us to be. We're a black family that moved into a mostly white block, and from the second the U-Haul hit this street, she decided that was an invasion." Matt nodded once. "I hear you." "No," the man said, "I need you to really hear me." He wasn't angry now, he wasn't yelling. He sounded tired. Dangerous tired. The kind of tired that builds over years of being polite so that nobody can ever say you were the problem. "This isn't about music," he said. "It's about existence. We exist, and that's too loud for her." Nobody argued. Even the suspect, for all her talking, had nothing for that. The medic finished the initial exam. "She's stable," he said. "We're transporting her now just to be safe." "Sir, ma'am, you can ride along." The wife nodded, wiping her eyes with the heel of her palm. "Thank you." Matt pulled the woman up from the pavement. She resisted like she was insulted by the touch. "This is insane," she repeated. "You're ruining my life over nothing. Over drama. I tried to warn you about them, and this is what I get. I'm the one who's unsafe here. I'm the one who's been intimidated." He stands outside at night with his friends. They talk loud, they smoke, and I have to listen to that. We didn't have that before they moved in. This was a respectable street. Families, professionals, people who care what the property values look like. I'm not the only one who feels this way. Everyone's been talking about it. Carl stared at her like she was from another planet. "You tried to drown a black child," he said. She snapped her head toward him like she'd been slapped. "Don't twist it. Don't make it racial. That's exactly the problem with people like you. You always make it racial." Carl let out a dry, humorless sound. "Lady," he said, "it was racial when you called us because his friends were laughing." For the first time, she went quiet. Matt led her toward the gate. The other officers opened the back door of the cruiser. As they walked, neighbors had begun to creep out onto porches, lights flicking on up and down the street. Curtain shadows, phone cameras, whispering. The woman straightened her shoulders like she thought she still had an audience that believed her. The family didn't look at the neighbors. They didn't need an audience. They needed their kid to keep breathing. As the paramedics carried the little girl toward the ambulance, Carl walked beside the father. "I'm riding with you," Carl said. The father looked at him, surprised. You don't have to do that, officer. Carl shook his head. Yeah, he said quietly. I do. Matt stayed behind in the yard, watching the cruiser pull off with the suspect in the back seat, still talking, still insisting she was the victim here. He watched the ambulance pull away seconds. Later, lights flashing, the father's hand resting on his daughter's chest while the mother held the girl's hand. When the street finally fell quiet, Matt stood alone by the pool. The stroller was still in the water. It lay on its side at the bottom, tipped against the slope, a pale shape under the rippling surface. For a long time, he just stared at it. Because up until tonight, noise complaint had meant music, voices, bass. Now, he understood what it really meant on Maple Drive. It meant, they moved in and I want them out. It meant, this neighborhood was mine and now I have to share it with people I decided don't belong. It meant, send someone with a badge to make them feel small. And tonight, it almost meant a funeral. Matt exhaled slowly, pulled his notepad, and began writing. He didn't know yet what the judge would say. He didn't know yet how the headlines would read, but he knew one thing very clearly. This wasn't over, and it wasn't going to be written up as disturbance resolved. Not anymore. He was going to make sure of that. By the next morning, Maple Drive wasn't quiet anymore. It wasn't the kind of neighborhood where things usually made the news. People here liked the idea that nothing ever happened. The grass stayed short, the driveways stayed clean, the trash cans rolled out at the exact same time on Thursdays. People waved with 2 fingers from the steering wheel and pretended they were all the same kind of good. But by 9 a.m., everyone on the block had already seen the video. The camera mounted over the sliding door in the backyard had caught everything. Not the scream after, not the panic, not the tears, the moment. The woman walked into the yard when she wasn't supposed to be there. She looked at the stroller. She put both hands on it, and she pushed it into the deep end. No sound, no argument, no shove from anyone else, no accident, no I tripped. She walked up and did it. It was hard to watch. It was harder not to. By noon, it was everywhere. People were posting it with captions like pure evil and this is why we say it's real and she needs prison. Some of the comments said the quiet part out loud. Some of the comments said worse. By 2 p.m., reporters were already circling Maple Drive. That was fast, even for suburban drama. But the story wasn't neighbor dispute. The story was a white woman calling police on her black neighbors for noise, then trying to drown their black child while the officers were on scene. That kind of story doesn't stay on a block. It spreads. The department had no choice but to respond. A press briefing was called. A statement went out. An arrest was made. The child is stable. The incident is under investigation. Words, careful and flat. Words that said everything and nothing. But what mattered didn't happen behind microphones. It happened in 2 places, the hospital and the courthouse. At the hospital, the little girl lay under observation for most of the night. She had swallowed water. She had panicked hard. They checked her lungs, watched her sleep, kept oxygen ready just in case. The pediatric nurse kept her voice soft, explaining every tube and every wire to her parents, and then again to the girl like it was all some kind of game. She was okay. That sentence, she was okay, moved like electricity through everyone who had been there. Her mother did not sleep, not for a second. She sat in the chair next to the bed with the blanket around her shoulders, fingers tangled in her daughter's curls, eyes wide open and red at the edges. You could see what was happening in her head. Replay, replay, replay. The splash, the scream, the empty stroller sinking out of sight. Her father sat forward with his elbows on his knees, hands clasped, head down. There was a stiffness in his back, like he was still holding tension in his spine, because part of his body had decided not to relax. Not yet. He talked very quietly whenever his daughter stirred. He told her she was safe. He told her she was brave. He told her she did nothing wrong. He did not say, "It's over." He didn't believe that yet. Carl sat with them. He didn't have to. He wasn't assigned. He just stayed. He had changed into a dry uniform, but his hair still held the faint chlorine smell from the pool. He had written his incident report. He had called his supervisor. He had answered questions. He could have clocked out. He didn't. He sat in that little pediatric room and kept watch the way you sit with family after something bad. Not because you can fix it, but because leaving would feel like betrayal. At one point, around 3:40 in the morning, the father looked over at him and said quietly, "Thank you." Carl shook his head. "Don't thank me," he said. "I didn't get there first." The father let out a small sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob at the same time. "Doesn't matter," he said. "You jumped." Carl looked at the girl. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I jumped. In the courthouse, things were not calm. The woman was brought in front of a judge that same day, still in yesterday's makeup, still in yesterday's attitude. She kept saying words like misunderstanding and overreaction and community safety, like they were magic keys that would open a door and let her walk back out into her life. They didn't work. What did work against her was the footage. The judge watched it twice. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't give a speech. He just set conditions. 1-year probation, mandatory counseling, an order of protection, and a no-contact radius of 100 meters from the family's property. 100 meters sounded like a number on paper, but on Maple Drive it meant this. She wasn't allowed to walk past their mailbox. She wasn't allowed to accidentally show up on their sidewalk. She wasn't allowed to pause her car in front of their driveway and stare. In the hallway, after the hearing, she tried to talk. "They're acting like I'm some kind of monster," she said to no one and to everyone at once. "This is ruining my reputation. People are filming my house. I've lived here for 12 years. I've served on the HOA board. I've worked to keep this area decent. I've called about speeding. I've called about suspicious cars. I've called about strange men walking around and looking in yards. I care. And now I'm the criminal? Because I tried to show the police what's happening here? Because I'm concerned for property values and safety? This is insane. This is completely insane." Someone in the hallway muttered, "You tried to drown a baby." She threw up her hands. "Oh my God, stop with that word," she snapped. "Stop making it emotional. It wasn't personal. I wasn't targeting her. I was trying to make a point about supervision. They leave that child sitting right next to a pool while they have people over, drinking, blasting music, bringing in God knows who, and I'm supposed to just sit there and pretend everything's fine. I was trying to get the officers to see that he's not a safe parent, that's all. That's all. And now you're all calling me racist because it's the easy card to play. That's disgusting." It wasn't a smart thing to say, because the video didn't just show her hands on the stroller. It also had audio from outside mics. And on that audio, you could hear her right before she pushed it. You could hear her whisper, low and fast, like she was talking to herself. "Let's see how you people handle this." That part was already circulating online too. Back on Maple Drive, everybody had suddenly found an opinion. Some neighbors were pretending they hadn't known, pretending they never heard her say anything like that, pretending they were shocked. Others quietly started leaving things. On the porch, there were flowers, cards, a stuffed bear in a tiny life jacket, a casserole in foil, an envelope with a handwritten note that just said, "We're sorry. You shouldn't have to go through this to live here." But not everyone came forward in person. Some of them were still watching through blinds. The family noticed. Of course they noticed. You always notice. They drove home from the hospital late the next afternoon. No sirens now. No flashing blue and red against the house. No officers in the yard. Just them. The three of them. Mother holding her daughter in the back seat. Father driving in silence. When they pulled into the driveway, the father cut the engine and didn't move for a long moment. He kept both hands on the wheel and stared through the windshield at his own front door. His wife touched his shoulder. "We're home," she whispered. He nodded once. "Yeah," he said, "we're home." But the word felt different now. Home used to mean safety, rest, privacy. Now it meant proof. Now it meant surveillance cameras, incident numbers, police statements, neighbors with camera phones, and a woman across the street who had looked him in the eye and decided his family didn't belong here enough to live. They carried their daughter inside. She was sleepy and quiet, thumb in her mouth, head on her mother's shoulder. The doctor had said she might be clingy for a while, might have nightmares, might cry when she sees water. "That's normal," the doctor said. "That's trauma." The father helped her lie down on the couch and tucked a blanket over her. He sat on the floor next to her instead of the chair. He wasn't going to be more than arm's reach away from her for a while. That was clear. His wife knelt across from him, her hands in her lap. For a long time, neither of them said anything. Finally, she asked him, quietly, "Do you still want to stay here?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at his daughter. He looked at the living room they had barely finished unpacking. He looked at the stack of labeled boxes they hadn't gotten to yet. Books, winter clothes, photos. He looked at the pink birthday balloon still half deflated in the kitchen from what was supposed to be a normal night. Then he said it. "Yes." His wife blinked. "Yes?" "Yes," he repeated. "We're staying." She let out a breath that shook. "Why?" He rubbed his forehead. "Because that's the game," he said. "That's always been the game. They push, and we're supposed to run. They make it hell, and we're supposed to disappear so they can say, 'See? They never last here. They're not like us. They don't invest. They don't care about community.' That's how they rewrite it. That's how they tell the story at the next cookout 10 years from now when they're bragging about how the neighborhood stayed nice." His voice got lower. "And I'm done letting people like her write our story." His wife closed her eyes. One tear slid down, but she didn't wipe it. "She could have killed our baby," she whispered. He swallowed. "I know." "I watched her do it," she said. Her voice cracked, but she kept talking. "I watched her put her hands on my baby and push her, and I couldn't get there fast enough, and Her whole body folded and she pressed her hands over her face and shook. He didn't tell her to calm down. He didn't tell her it was okay. He slid across the floor and wrapped her in his arms and held on. "It's not okay," he said into her hair. "It's not okay." But she didn't win. She let out a small broken laugh. "You really believe that?" "Yeah," he said. "I do. Because here's what had changed. And this part, even he hadn't expected. For the first time since they moved in, it wasn't his word against hers. When she called the police on day 3 and said he was lurking around her car, it had been his word against hers. when she stood in the street and filmed his brother and said she was documenting suspicious activity. It had been his word against hers. When she slid that note under their door, "Some of us worked hard to buy here. We don't want it turning into where you people come from," and then denied writing it, it had been his word against hers. Last night wasn't like that. Last night the officers saw. Last night the cameras saw. Last night the whole city saw. And you can't unsee that. A few days later he did something he hadn't planned to do. He posted, not a rant, not a curse, not a scream, just a photo. It was taken in their backyard in the afternoon sun. His daughter was in the shallow end of the pool with bright orange floaties on her arms, splashing water with her hands. Her mouth was open in a grin, the kind of grin you only get from 3-year-olds who don't know yet that the world can hate them. His hand was in the frame, steadying her stomach just under the water line. His thumb was spread wide, protective but gentle. You could see his wedding ring. You could see his watch. You could see the small scar on his wrist. Under the photo, he wrote, "She's learning to swim. She wasn't scared to get back in. I was. But she wasn't. She's stronger than me already." To everyone asking if we're moving, no, we're not going anywhere. We're not leaving our home because someone else decided we don't belong in it. To everyone saying it wasn't about race. She called the police on us for unloading groceries. She filmed my brother for laughing. She put her hands on my 3-year-old and pushed her into 10 feet of water to prove a point. If you still don't see it, you don't want to. To the officers who jumped without thinking, thank you. To the neighbors who stayed quiet while this built up, I hope you never stay quiet again. We're staying. We're breathing. We're not going to drown so someone else can feel comfortable. The post spread, and with that, the story stopped being a neighbor dispute and became what it really was, a record. Not just of what she did, but of how this works, how it always starts polite, how it always sounds like I'm just concerned, how it always dresses itself in property values and safety, and this used to be a nice area, how it always finds a way to make a black family feel like guests in a house they paid for. Maple Drive felt different after that. When the family sat on their porch, people looked them in the eye. When the wife walked to her car in the morning, someone across the street said, "Good morning," and meant it. When the little girl toddled down the sidewalk with her floaties still on her arms because she refused to take them off, a neighbor knelt, smiled at her, and said, "You're brave." The woman who pushed that stroller was gone. She wasn't allowed within 100 meters of the property. On paper, it was called a protective order. In real life, to that family, it was something else. Breathing room. Was it justice? No. Justice would have been never having to prove they were allowed to exist here in the first place. But it was something. And sometimes, something is the place you stand so you can keep going. In the end, that's what stayed with Officer Matt more than the screaming or the water or the cuffs. It was what the father said to him 2 days later, when Matt came back, not as a cop answering a call, but as a man standing on someone else's porch. The father looked him in the eye and said, "You know the part that scares me most?" Matt shook his head. "What's that?" "It's not that she did it," the man said. "It's that she did it like she expected to get away with it." Matt swallowed. "She won't." The man nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, "not this time." The words hung there between them, quiet, heavy, true. Not this time. Not on Maple Drive. Not to his family. Not to his daughter. And that was how the street finally changed. Not when the squad cars rolled in, not when the cuffs clicked. Not even when the video hit the internet. It changed when a black family said, out loud and in public, We live here and refuse to leave.